Reaching out to you.
Good afternoon, audience. My name is Anthony Pius, popularly known as T-Man or 12. This is the Sage's Mind on 12 Gist TV. 12 Gist TV is a part of 12gist.com. Remember to subscribe. Today with us on the Sage's Mind is Dr. Barrister Lionel Effiom, the senior lecturer in the Department of Economics, University of Calabar. Good afternoon, Barrister.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Good afternoon, audience.
Sir, please, may we meet you?
Well, my name is Lionel Effiom. I'm a lecturer with the Department of Economics at University of Calabar. I'm a very simple man.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Today on the Sage's Mind, we'll be looking at issues surrounding economic developments in our country. Many persons have been complaining that the situation in the country has gone from bad to worse, while some others are of the view that things are much better than when the previous administration was in office. Doctor will be helping us do justice to the topic. So, Doctor, of recent, there have been many returned loots to the coffers of the federal government from those who were convicted of stealing and laundering Nigeria's funds. For example, the former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diezani'Loot, was accused of stealing $90 billion US, and as at last week, it was also heard that the money has been returned back to the federal government. However, as with many other cases of returned loot to the coffers of the federal government, Nigerians are yet to feel the impact of this kind of monies in the economy. Can you please help us explain what is happening, sir?
Well, first of all, it is actually very disheartening and surprising that one individual could cut away from the government's coffers such huge amounts of money. When I say it's huge, I think it is an understatement. I wouldn't know the kind of adjective to use to qualify such quantum of money that was leaked out of the treasury of the federal government. When you want to look at it critically, this is an amount of money that she wouldn't be able to use in her own lifetime. We are not just talking about 90 billion naira. And even if it were to be in the naira, denominated in naira, she wouldn't have even been able to use it in her lifetime, not to talk of the next 2, 3, 4 generations of ours. But we are now looking at it from the billions of naira, and so it is quite criminal, it is immoral, and like I said, I wouldn't know the kind of adjective to use to qualify such theft, such thievery of our commonwealth. Now, having provided the context of that, your question is simply that, look, huge amounts of money, not only from the Diezani, we've been talking about the Abacha loot that has been returned over the years. So not just only that, what has been the impact of those monies that have been returned? What impact does it have? What implications does it have to the economy? Now, we cannot answer that question in isolation. We cannot just pick it and say, look, this is the money from the Abacha loot, this is what it has been used for. If you look at the 2018 budget, you discover that part of the monies that have been returned, either from the Abacha loot or whatever, has been contextualized and integrated into the budget. In other words, every money, every 10 kobo that the federal government has, they can't use it randomly. It has to be institutionalized. It has to be subjected into the mainstream of the budget, and then subjected to the budgetary process. The National Assembly will now look at it and say, this is what is to be used for, this is what it has to be used for. So Yes, I know those monies have been part of the budgetary process, but you would need now to ask me, not just the Diezani'Loot as it were, but the entire performance of the budget. So in answering that question, we are not just looking at the loot as it were, but we are looking at what is the performance quotient of the budget. How has the federal government been able to implement the budget that they have passed since 2015, 2016, 2017, in fact, ever since the Muhammadu Buhari administration came to be? So in answering that question, I don't want to approach it from a singular prism or perspective. It has to be analyzed within the mainstream of budgetary performance. And when we want to look at it from that angle, definitely you will see that our budget has been underperforming. A few days ago, I read in the papers, I mean, when the federal government, the administration laid before the National Assembly the 2018 budget, they did say that the performance of 2017 budget was, I think it was below 60%. So that is the way you could judge either the Abacha-Loot or the Diezani'Loot. You judge it from the holistic view of the capital expenditure of the federal government in the budget.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
So, Doctor, does it now mean that it is the economic conditions in this country, as it were, will not improve except when the money that was recovered from Diezani, Alice Madueke, and others that who recently returned theirs, until when it is imputed in the budget? If that were the case also, why has the monies returned in the past not impacted in the economy of the country?
Simply, it's a question of institutions. When the institutions are weak, definitely it has a compromising effect on the economy. For instance, this is 2018 and the budget was just passed some few weeks ago, 7 months into the fiscal year. So definitely so many things are going to be left undone. The fiscal year for Nigeria begins from January to December. And if the budget was laid before the National Assembly in the month of November, and then they passed it 7 months later, then so many things would have gone wrong. There are salaries that would be unpaid. Investors would not have confidence in the economy. So many other things would actually come to play that would defeat the intentment of the budget. So it is not a question of, like I said earlier, it is not a question of the Diezani returns, as it were. No, it is a question of the institutional capacity of the federal government, of the legislature, of the executive to be able to implement the budget as was laid before the National Assembly. Where you have at the end of the fiscal year, we see ministries, departments and agencies return so much money unused back to the federal government. It shows that what we call in economics the absorptive capacity is actually low. The absorptive capacity is simply the ability of the different sectors of the economy to productively use capital. And so when capital has been earmarked, so this one is not a question of there is no money again, but the issue is how have the respective ministries, departments and agencies, how have they been able to use the monies that have been allocated to them? So you have a road to build, and then the monies come late, the capital expenditure has been laid before you, and then the monies that were supposed to come late, and now you are not able to implement the road project. Definitely at the end of the day, you return it back to the coffers of the government because that's the policy. So it's not a question of, like I said earlier, it's not a question of the loot, as it were, return, but even the monies that were not looted, the ones that have been legally appropriated by the National Assembly, how well have these monies been used? And so we get back to the institutional capacity of the 3 tiers of government, and so they are found wanting.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Success Tour TV, reaching out to you.